Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. A special thank you to the Weinberg Family CP Center for sponsoring this webinar series, and especially to Manelli Vasquez and Jacqueline Chen, who were the driving force to organizing everything behind the scenes and making sure that this actually happened. The title of today's presentation is Physical Therapy Intervention in Infancy and During the Early Years. My name is Lisa Yoon, and I'm excited to be able to talk about one of my favorite topics and to take part in what will hopefully be a nice discussion as we share our collective experience as a parent, person with CP, or provider. So a little bit about myself. I'm a board-certified pediatric physical therapist with more than 25 years of experience as a community-based therapist, both home-based and school-based. My primary role now is as an assistant professor in the programs in physical therapy here at Columbia University. My clinical and research interests are neuromuscular disease and cerebral palsy, with a special interest in work with infants and caregivers in the early years. What has been very exciting in the CP clinical community is the work done by an international group of experts on early detection and diagnosis, which has paved the way to the possibility of earlier intervention and harnessing the power of neuroplasticity, or the ability of the brain to change more easily and rapidly with intervention. Regardless of diagnosis, we know that intervention can and should start when concerns or delays are identified. It's never too early to start. And although there's still much work to be done in terms of what exact type of intervention is best, there are common ingredients to interventions that have the best research evidence. One key ingredient is the family as being the most important for long-term success. So in terms of the agenda, preview of what I will discuss, we will define the Therapeutic Alliance and who the critical players are in this dynamic, examine the CARES model, which is designed to optimize neuromotor health. We will talk about the provision of therapy and the ingredients for success, share what's new in research about intervention in the early years, then also share some resources for systems and supports that can get you started if you are concerned about your infant or child's motor development. So what is the Therapeutic Alliance? It's the relationship between the parent caregiver, the child, and the therapist. That is the cornerstone of any successful intervention. The fundamental principles that define this therapeutic alliance are trust and respect for each person's role in this relationship, including the child, and the skills, experiences, and expertise each brings. Transparency and communication, so truth and honesty and sharing perspective and what each person envisions as their hopes, goals, and dreams, and being able to be free to discuss any topic without judgment really sets the stage for developing this trusting and respectful relationship. Negotiation and collaboration with regards to the goals and the focus of treatment, understanding that the family is the constant in the infant's and child's life today and into the future, and that the professionals bring their unique perspective and expertise, enabling informed and shared decision-making to occur. So this is a graphic of the CARES model developed by Peyton and colleagues that provides a visual representation of this transdiagnostic or diagnostic unspecified approach to optimizing neuromotor health. It is based on the inclusion of 4 core principles: active learning, environmental enrichment, caregiver engagement, and all of this under a strength-based approach. So in this model, the pink area of the graphic to the left signifies environmental enrichment, which is the therapeutic context for which intervention occurs, and it provides an environment that supports infant-directed actions, task-specific experiences, and challenges using age and developmentally appropriate materials. Next in the deep purple is active learning, which is the therapeutic action or mechanism by which intervention is delivered. The green figure around the arrow represents caregiver engagement and is how the intervention is carried out. Caregiver engagement is reliant on their understanding of their child, being able to collaborate with their therapists as partners in decision-making, developing the goals of therapy and the focus. The more involved in these processes the caregivers are, the more they are empowered to advocate for their child as they build upon their own inherent capacity. So when we look for what are the ingredients of effective interventions, we know that on the part of the parent caregiver, being actively engaged in therapy, using their own expertise and investment in their infant, knowledge of what motivates them, and the routines that could support practice, as well as collaborating to develop the goals and the focus of the treatment with their therapist. What I've heard from families and parents over and over is that they want help finding ways and giving their child opportunities to be able to practice these skills during naturally occurring activities and routines. But they don't wish to be their child's therapist, which is completely understandable. On the part of the child, providing opportunities to explore with trial and error, as well as peppering practice throughout the day in varied contexts, using active movement and minimizing hands-on support as a primary way of providing intervention. So in the past, we have tried to create an errorless environment whereby hands-on support was a part of regular therapy. And what we have learned is that providing a child an opportunity to explore their own body and their own strengths and challenges are a part of this learning process, and that minimization and supportive learning are more important for the overall motor learning of the child. On the part of the therapist, using their knowledge to be able to help the family develop interventions that are important to them, are effective and age and developmentally appropriate, as well as helping families adapt activities and to coach them in their natural environment is the role of the therapist. So here in this picture on the top, you can see the mother is engaging and using her relationship with her infant to be able to help her be able to lift her head for longer and be able to tolerate tummy time, which I know can be very challenging for a lot of kids who have neuromotor challenges. In the bottom here, we can see ways to entice or motivate children to be able to practice reaching and or kicking using a variety of motivating materials and toys. Maybe in the early years, it's something that's tactile, something that they can feel with their hands, something that drives music to play via kicking or reaching or activating the toy. So using those strategies to drive infant movement and exploration is one of the most important ingredients for success. So this next slide summarizes emerging and well-known interventions in the early years for children with CP. And rather than explaining the specifics of each individual study, I've highlighted or I've identified three main or broad categories. So for infants and children with hemiplegic type CP, or that type of CP that primarily affects one side of their body, whether it be the left side or the right side, are in green. The small light green circle represents a study that's underway to use strategies that have been successful in older children and adapting them to the younger population. Family coaching and environmental enrichment interventions are in purple. And physical therapist-led studies targeting motor activities that tap into infant motivation to drive problem solving and motor learning are in dark orange, and the light orange is a trial comparing both that active motor and cognitive intervention with more passive interventions. CIMT stands for Constraint-Induced Movement Therapy, and HABIT, or HABIT, is for Hand-Arm Bimanual Intensive Therapy. These are two types of intervention approaches originally developed for children 4 years and older with hemiplegic type CP, or that type of CP that primarily affects one side of their body. While research now has demonstrated that HABIT, or using both hands simultaneously to drive use of their hands, is superior to CIMT, research is now underway to adapt these approaches to younger children. So in terms of infants with hemiplegia, there is a CIMT approach, or where a mitt or sock is placed on the stronger arm to encourage the use of the weaker one. And so in this picture, you can see, while you can't see their stronger hand in a mitt or a sock, you can certainly see that this child's actively engaged in engaging with this ball using their weaker hand. As a part of this approach, there's a gradual increase in the challenge, which is depicted in this bottom photo. You can see again, a sock is being placed over the child's stronger hand, and material is being used in the child's weaker hand. Varied practice is also a part of this intervention, and you can see in this top photo where the mitt is still on the child's hand, but perhaps the target is placed a little bit higher for the child to be able to lift and reach with their weaker hand. Children with all types of CP can benefit from HABIT or HABIT-EAL, and this is an intensive model that is used to develop the use of the whole body, both hands, as well as incorporating the legs into the movement pattern. And so whether your child has the type of CP that affects arms and legs, or just legs, or just one side of the body, HABIT and HABIT-EAL, which has been demonstrated in all three types of CP. So those purple circles, which you saw on the previous slide, represents the coaching and environmental enrichment approaches. And so we know as a part of this approach relies on that parent-infant connection and relationship. And that relationship is rooted in understanding their infant intimately and being able to respond and interpret their cues, as well as being able to motivate their infant to persist in the face of challenging activities. Also, in this approach, finding those opportunities for practice in daily routines and activities are a part of this coaching and environmental enrichment approach. So here in this photo in the top, you can see that the father is encouraging this baby, perhaps singing to her or talking to her or making silly noises to engage her in practicing or staying on her stomach for longer during tummy time, as well as this mother engaging this child again visually to help her tolerate and be able to be more successful in tummy time activities. So the other ingredient is active goal-directed movement. And we know the important ingredients for these are that the activity is age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, provides that inherently motivating activity that the infant would want to practice over and over again. Again, perhaps using those sensory-based approaches, using fun toys that light up or play music when touched or activated. And also an activity that provides just that right challenge. So not too difficult and not too easy. So in this picture at the top, you can see that this infant is actively engaged in looking at this rattle. And you can see that she is trying to figure out some way to get to this toy, perhaps to reach, to touch it, to bring it to her mouth, things like that. You can see in this other photo of a child who is already able to sit that this inherently motivating activity of stacking and then knocking things over provides that challenge that is age and developmentally appropriate. And you can see in the bottom photo here of this infant who is really intent on tracking and following the bubbles, and then using his hands to reach up to perhaps touch and or pop the bubbles. We know also that the combination of a motor problem that challenges the infant to find a solution is a potent activity for motor learning. And so finding those activities that tap into a motor problem and cognitive challenges that helps direct movement through self-initiated movements, means to end, and problem solving are incredibly important for learning. So you can see in this bottom photo of a child who is exploring this cloth-based cube using various orientations of her hand to be able to explore. So this is how materials are used and are important to kind of challenge and also allow the infant to be able to explore on their own. And then in the top photo, you can see that this baby is having to balance on their right side and stabilize while reaching with their opposite hand to delicately stack these blocks. So earlier I talked about systems and supports that could help provide intervention for people that are interested in finding therapists. So the early intervention system is a federally funded system that is state administered. The Committee on Preschool Special Education is for children that are between the ages of 3 and 5. The Committee on Special Education is for those children 5 to 21. And then, of course, we have the Weinberg Family Cerebral Palsy Center, which is a lifespan support, and you can contact them through phone and or email. So in terms of the school-based systems, the CPSE or preschool system, or CSE or the school-based system, here is some information about how you can access these systems and or refer. These are for the tri-state area. If you live outside of the tri-state area, there is a national directory located on the bottom of this page for which you could reference your state and find the contacts to those specific individuals. These are the early intervention contacts for the tri-state area. And then at the bottom here is the early intervention state directory for those who live outside of the tri-state area that are interested in finding a therapist or referring your infant. So as a summary, the ingredients for successful interventions that optimizes neuroplasticity and enhanced learning include engagement of the parent caregiver in collaboration with their therapist or medical team in determining the goals and the focus of treatment, and providing an enriched environment whereby infant-initiated and directed movement can help their child develop motor solutions to problems, and also include trial and error and individualized and meaningful practice. So we know that intervention can and should begin anytime a motor concern is identified. And all of the evidence-based approaches in infancy and in the early years presented today emphasize the critical role family plays for success. Finding and establishing a support system of a therapy and or medical team, as well as mental health and community supports who can partner with you and your child and family is important. So with that, I thank you for your attention. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and I'd love to take any questions. Thank you.